Hey everyone, AOC has a problem with the United States Senate.
I don't support the filibuster. I don't support elements of this institution that we know, were founded on Jim Crow.
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and that was AOC asked the other day about this Democratic Socialists of America proposal to abolish the United States Senate, among other governing institutions in our country. I want to talk about why this is such a stupid and wrong-headed idea, and also why it's literally impossible under our system of government. This is truly a revolutionary proposal. So first, let's look briefly at this DSA document that was released just recently, spelling out what reforms or so-called reforms they want. This program is called Workers Deserve More! And of course, red fist. And here's a key part of it. They want to replace the two-party system with a multi-party democracy, expand the House of Representatives, implement proportional representation and ranked choice voting in all elections, and abolish the Senate. And that's not all. For the working class to govern, supposedly, we need a new political system, end political corruption and legalize bribery, get rid of lobbyists, dark money, and citizens united, and publicly finance all elections, abolish the Electoral College, a lot of abolition going on here, replace the president and Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to Congress. So eliminate the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme Court. That's all. Here was a DSA co-chair explaining the organization's animus towards the Senate in a Fox News interview.
So you don't want to abolish the Senate, the United States Senate, because that's what Article 1 is.
The United States Senate is an undemocratic institution. It gives more representation to people in smaller states than to the 30 million people in California.
So let's unpack what he's saying there, right? It's crazy at one level to say the Senate is undemocratic. What happens? You have Senate elections in each state, and the person with the most votes wins the election and goes to the Senate, right? That is small d democratic, no question about it. But what he's getting at there is a disproportion in population, right? You have large states, they get 2 senators. Small states, they also get 2 senators. And this is how the system was set up, and it's supposed to work because one of the functions of the Senate, we'll get to some of the others in a minute, is to make sure that big states aren't totally overwhelming our political system, and out of the way places that are otherwise easy to ignore have some sway on our national affairs. So this is why you get California, nearly 40 million people, 2 senators. Wyoming, about 600,000 people, 2 senators, right? Now, this is the way it's always been. Go way back to the beginning in the 1790s. It was Virginia, the state that had the big population, and it was a behemoth in the Union, had a population of 750,000 people or so. Meanwhile, Delaware just had about 60,000 people. They both had 2 senators. The disparities got larger as you went across time. 1900, New York, 7.2 million people. Nevada, about 42,000 people, both 2 senators. Now, it's the House that gives you your proportional representation to population. If you look at California and Wyoming again, California, 53 members of Congress, that's a lot. Wyoming, 1, just 1 lonely Congress person. So the House has a different role than the Senate. And another expression of these different roles is the Senate actually used to be much more undemocratic in that you had state legislators appointing their senators. So it was decided this wasn't a great practice. 1, because you're not directly consulting the public will. 2, there was accusations of bribery and shady dealings over this appointments. So we get the 17th Amendment in 1913 that says you have to have direct election of senators. Now, the Senate is still more insulated from public opinion than the House is. You have 6-year terms, obviously more than the 2-year terms in the House. You have staggered elections in the Senate, whereas the House in its entirety stands for election every 2 years. And there's a purpose to this as well. The founders wanted the Senate to some extent to be a check on big changes and to make sure they'd been thought through to the maximum extent possible. And there was a consensus around them, which also goes to some of the Senate's rules that are controversial, including the filibuster. And this brings us back to AOC. So it's not clear what she meant when she said elements of the Senate were founded in the Jim Crow era, but I think she's thinking about the filibuster, which he also mentioned there. Now, it's certainly true that the filibuster was used during the 20th century to attempt to block landmark pieces of civil rights legislation unsuccessfully, as it turned out. But this has been a feature of the Senate for a very long time, really going back to the beginning. Unchecked, unlimited debate has always been a way in the Senate to try to delay things or to block things. It's not inherently racist. It doesn't inherently have anything to do with Jim Crow. And it's a very important tool that minority parties in the Senate always used to try to block the agenda of a president of the opposing party. We saw that in Trump's first term, and we're seeing it right now. So there's nothing illegitimate about the filibuster.
Senator, yield. No, sir, I will not yield.
So let's say, just in theory, I'm wrong. I'm never wrong, but let's just say I'm wrong, and wrong about everything on the merits having to do with the United States Senate. We all think it should be abolished. You know what? You still can't do it. You can't do it under the United States Constitution. As we all know, as we learned from Schoolhouse Rock or someplace else, the Constitution sets out in a process for amending the Constitution, right? There's one thing it says you can't amend, and that is each state having an equal number of senators. Here it is in Article 5. No state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. So why is that in there? Well, one, as I've been trying to explain to everyone in this video, the Senate's very important. The founders really cared about it. They thought it had an important function. And also, this bargain between the small states and the large states was absolutely crucial to getting the Constitution done at the Constitutional Convention. And the small states wanted to guarantee the large states weren't just going to turn around and trample on their rights and their prerogatives. So we get this provision, which means if you want to abolish the Senate, you can't do it under this constitutional system. The founders did not create a readily available self-destruct button for their own brilliant handiwork. So what we'd really be talking about here is the end of the American Republic as we've known it, at least since 1789, when the Constitution went into effect. And in some ways, what the DSA is talking about here would be a reversion to the Articles of Confederation, when we had a unicameral legislature, when there was no president, and when there was no federal judiciary. Now, that created a very weak central government, a catastrophically weak central government, as it turned out. And the socialists don't want that. What they're after instead is removing all the inherent obstacles to radical change in our multi-layered federal system. They want to move to something like the British parliamentary system, which one critic characterized at one point as an elective dictatorship. So the idea here is to remove all the inherent obstacles in a multi-layered federal system to radical change. By the way, that system reflects and is beautifully suited to a large, diverse continental nation. But they want something much simpler. So should they ever get a national majority for their agenda, they can slam it through with as few obstacles as possible and basically bayonet the political opposition. Now, most political parties reflexively reject the charge that they are a threat to our constitutional order. But here is the DSA, increasingly influential in our politics, and especially in the Democratic Party, making that threat to the constitutional order part of their political brand. Hey, by the way, comment, like, subscribe. I promise you won't regret it. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.